This had better be important.
Yes, sir. The American agent has infiltrated the X-Lab facility.
Welcome back to the Funker 530 Combat Footage Review. My name is Ronnie. I'll be your host once again. It is Friday, and we've got another good long show to go over combat footage from around the world. Well, technically not around the world. We're going to have a different kind of show tonight. We're going to be focused on one area of the world, and I'm sure you can guess which one that is. But do me a favor, just like always, tap on the like button, drop a comment in the chat. Hold on, what's going on with my stuff here? Something's a little weird with my audio. I'm not sure what's going on with it, but unless it's too crazy and you know, causing too many issues, given that we had to rebuild the studio, let me know. I'll figure it out for next time. Hopefully we can get through the show tonight without it being too much of a problem. But anyway, tap on the like button, drop a comment in the chat. We're going to get started right out of the gate with what is effectively the nothing ever happens folks punching the air. Israel has finally targeted Iran's nuclear capabilities. More specifically, those nuclear capabilities that the IAEA recently released a statement about non-compliance, essentially absolutely moving towards or down the path of creating a weapon. Our focus tonight, though, is going to be less about the justification of the strikes, just like always. I want to make sure and reinforce what it is that this show is here to do for you. If you want to ask my opinion on the strikes, we can cover that on the follow-up stream. I'll be playing Dune Awakening. We'll drink some beer. We can get mad at each other on the internet, act tough, and all that stuff. But here we're focused on the footage, what exactly happened on the ground. Anyway, I'll get off my soapbox on that, but let's get started taking a look at the footage. The very first thing I wanted to show you guys is going to be this little bit of footage, which is Natanz. Natanz is essentially one of the flagship nuclear facilities for Iran. We're going to start at Natanz, and then we're going to work our way back, all the way back to Iran and their response. We've got quite a bit of this stuff, too. This is Natanz on fire. I'm going to take you guys to a map to show you exactly where that is, where exactly, wrong button, where exactly that was filmed from, as well as where you're seeing that smoke, that fire coming up. So let's go to the map here. We're already, you don't get any map sounds for this one. So that video specifically was filmed from, I don't know, Route 7, whatever this road is, the Kashan-Natanz freeway. Park on driveways, drive on parkways kind of deal. And as I continue to kind of pull out on the map here, just to give you some level of understanding of where we are in Iran. Waiting for the hamster to load here. So we're south of Tehran, and the Natanz facility itself is here. Now, I'm going to show you guys some, we're going to break from the normal video that we do on this, and I'm going to show, there's already been some satellite photo released. That satellite photo is really only going to be able to depict for you what type of damage at the surface level was done. There are a couple key things to point out in that, though. It's important as we're watching this, or as we're looking at this satellite photo imagery, that we're going to see that a lot of the Natanz facility, as well as a lot of their other facility, they're very proud of the fact that they have a ton of shit underground. Very proud of that. However, there is an inordinate amount of infrastructure above ground that supports those underground operations. And I'm going to try and show you that here. So this is going to be some of the earliest satellite imagery we got from Natanz. And it's coming up for you now. Make very specific note of what you're seeing on fire here. This is power infrastructure for Natanz. We could take this grid and drop it right in on our map there and zoom straight down onto it. But this is effectively power. Not only is that going to be likely providing power to the entire above ground area, possibly also supporting the below ground area. Note this building has been destroyed as well. I got some more imagery to show you. But I recall tweeting these out. I pushed these out and the first comments were, yeah, but that's all surface damage. That's all. Keep in mind, those above ground facilities directly support the below ground facilities. Here's another. Now, there have been some limited reports about radiation on the ground. I have yet to see anything official published. That doesn't necessarily mean it isn't out there. You know, I tell you guys all the time that my understanding of the situation is not necessarily 100% of the whole situation. It's just what I was able to gather leading up to the show, and it's just me putting this together. I got one more bit of satellite footage that I wanted to show you here on this one, though. That is this small little building here. So multiple targets hit at Natanz, and that's what you're seeing on fire, right? And I think that's why it's important to call this out, is when you're viewing that footage of Natanz, it's not necessarily the underground area that you're seeing on fire. You are seeing this stuff burning. Now, there were plenty of reports stating that were coming across the wire, I should say. It's difficult to source things, especially from social media, because everybody considers themselves to be a source, but under 99% of circumstances, you're getting that like tertiary source at best. You know, 3 or 4 steps removed, 7 steps from Kevin Bacon or whatever the hell it is. So it's difficult to really say whether or not the underground facility or area was being targeted. I will say, though, that one of the most prominent reports that I saw were that nuclear capabilities at Natanz were severely damaged. So there were at least some reports stating that they were targeting the underground area, for which Israel would theoretically have that capability based on some of the munitions they've used elsewhere. And then there were also reports, like I said, of radiation or damage that had been done. So we can kind of compile all of those and use our typical Intel brain, which is all probabilities. People think that Intel is certainties. Intel is probabilities, confidence levels, low, medium or moderate, high. Moderate to high confidence, they absolutely were targeting the underground facilities. Now, Fordow was reported to have been targeted as well. I'm going to show you guys where that is. This is an underground facility. And because of what's known about how far underground it is, it's believed that the primary targeting of this was entrances, essentially bury them alive kind of deal, collapse it. But there is at least geolocated footage of strikes that took place at that location. Here is that footage. Very small amount of footage. Now, there is this one more piece of footage. I have an issue with this one because there were at least some comments. There was at least some indication that this might not be the area that it's described. I'm just going to throw it up here as footage of more strikes. This was originally reported to be footage showing Fordow being targeted. Fordow, pronunciation is my strong suit if you can't tell. but I can't be certain about that. This specific footage has not been geolocated to the best of my knowledge. Here you are. Note in the distance here. Did Israel get bombed? Oh, don't you worry. We're going to get there.
این گرم دره دیشبم اینجا رو زدم ویدیو گرفته بودم دیشب البته یه مقدار کنارتر رو زده بود دوباره الان صدای انفجار اومد و مشاهده میکنید دودم بلند
I'm kind of working through a timeline right now, if you will. Now, one of the things that I kind of want to talk about, I want to pause for a moment and talk about some of Israel's statements that they had about this specific operation. First and foremost, let's talk about the operation name. The operation name is called Rising Lion, Operation Rising Lion. It was very specifically to target Israel's nuclear capabilities. Now, one of the things that they did in the lead up to the targeting of nuclear capabilities, facilities primarily, was also target Iran's ability to not only defend itself, but also retaliate to its largest capability. Iran has already retaliated, and we're going to see some footage of that here in a little bit. But I'm going to show you guys some screenshots, not every bit of footage of each one of the high-rises that were hit by Israel, presumably being these penthouse kind of locations of major generals, brigadier generals across the IRGC and Iranian army. But we're also going to go through the list of those so you can get a better understanding of what Israel did to kind of, at a bare minimum, set the nuclear program back in Iran much further than has been previously done before. The nuclear program in Iran has been set back a multitude of times, whether it be malware, i.e. Stuxnet, for those of you that remember that. That one was super interesting. This is definitely my wheelhouse. I was working in cybersecurity at the time. And if you don't remember what it was really, we made the transition from the logical space, i.e. The internet, malware affecting primarily software, to industrial control systems, right? So the Stuxnet malware and the impact that had on Iran's nuclear program. But there have been a multitude of steps back for Iran that have kind of kept it at bay. And Israel's argument was that we've gone too far. They are too close, according to Israel. Israel told Donald Trump that as of, at a bare minimum, Monday. For those of you that aren't or that weren't tracking, as of Monday, Donald Trump essentially authorized dependents and non-essential personnel to depart just about all locations in the Middle East. The embassies in Kuwait, Bahrain, I want to say Iraq, so Baghdad as well. Let's go into the next little bit of footage that I have here. This is going to be footage of some of those high-rises that were targeted specifically to kill some of the high-level leaders within the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, some of the nuclear scientists. We're not going to cover each and every one of these, but I'm going to show you kind of a compilation photo that'll give you some understanding of what the different strikes looked like. Here is just one of those, one video of the aftermath of those strikes. Now these strikes, though, were all across Tehran. So I'm going to bring you out to about a 10,000, I don't know, 5,000 foot level and show you some of these impacts dotting the landscape across Tehran. There's one out there, one there, one there, one there, there. And they were extremely precise. I mean, extremely precise. And I want to pause here because I was having a conversation about this earlier with somebody. Somebody made the argument earlier, very prominent kind of following account, if you will, individual, whatever, that it was upsetting to see, or I don't remember the specific phrasing, so I'm paraphrasing. It was upsetting to see how precise Israel could be in targeting Iran this way, given how they have been battling Hamas in Gaza. Those two things cannot be more not compatible. They are two very, very different adversaries that you're dealing with. And one of the reasons I think Israel was so successful actually ties back to the nothing ever happens crowd, ties back to at least some level of complacency, but on the side of Iran. So when you look at, on the one hand, for Iran, you have this uniformed military that is some level of complacent that, to be honest with you, nothing ever really did happen for a long time. So there was at least some basis that Israel wasn't going to do this. That kind of made targeting in this being this precise a little bit easier, to be frank, having been somebody to create these targeting packages, complacency. Then you flip the coin over and you have what Israel is dealing with in Gaza against Hamas, against the Al-Qassam brigades. And what you effectively have is a guerrilla force hiding in and around the populace, wearing civilian uniforms, traveling in tunnels. And one of the main narratives was, well, why can't they just do more special operations type stuff like they did? And I'm going to show you some more footage here in a minute. Why can't they do that in Gaza? And I said, well, they have. So the problem. So think back. What was that? 2023. I think. No, it would have been last year sometime. There was a Special Operations Forces operation to recover hostages. They were being held at a quote-unquote journalist's house, if you remember that. Well, SOF went in and got burned and took contact, and it was such heavy contact that Israel basically had to level an entire city block plus to get them back out. Those missions, those adversaries can't be more different. And I kind of wanted to just pause and have that conversation with you really quick. We can't look at two very different situations like this with the same lens from a targeting perspective, as an intel guy, as somebody that has put these target packages together, because they can't be more different from a planning perspective. Let's move on, though. I wanted to continue working through some of this other footage. Now, it wasn't just, let's show you that compilation of all, I shouldn't say all, but multiple high rises that were hit. So note the precision on this. And there's an even better photo that shows the precision. It's just one hole in a wall. I don't know why I didn't capture that one. But Israel was very deliberate about where they were targeting. And obviously, the obvious narrative, which has an element of truth to it, is these are residential areas. And I think that that's one of those difficult conversations that if you are going to wage war, if you're going to take an action, a warring action against somebody, what is the risk? What is the tolerance of civilian casualties? Because I'm not answering that question for you. I'm not the one that made the decision to strike this. But it's one of those unfortunate realities that we talk about a lot. There has not ever in the history of warfare been a war where civilians weren't impacted. In fact, we pushed out on our Twitter a video from these initial strikes on these residential areas of a young girl, probably not much older or younger than my daughter, deceased underneath some rubble, right? So that is that decision-making toll that people talk about a lot, that reality that is why war is bad, that it should not get to that extreme. But let's move on. I wanted to share, actually, I want to go through the list here because this is the list of all of the personnel I am tracking. We might have a plus or minus on this. I'm not a news anchor. I did my best to compile it as good as I can for you, but it'll give you a good understanding of exactly what Israel was trying to do from both a conditioning perspective and a neutering perspective of their nuclear capability. Let's start at the top here. You had Major General Hossein Salami. That dude was the commander-in-chief of the IRGC, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. You see, the military in Iran is actually kind of twofold. You have two separate militaries. You've got the Iranian army, basically their main military. Underneath of that, it's kind of an umbrella. You've got like the Air Force and all the other stuff. And then you have the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. They're they're primarily there as the fanatics. They're there to protect the ideology of Iran, if you will. So these are the guys that have an immense amount of political power. He's dead. You have Major General Mohammad Bagheri. He's Chief of Staff of the Armed Forces of Iran. So, top dog. You have Rear Admiral Ali Shamakhani. I don't forgive the pronunciation on these. The interesting thing about this guy, he was also killed. He is a top aide to Khomeini, and was one of the people that was providing support to peace talks with the United States, or nuclear talks with the United States. Now, one of Donald Trump's statements was super interesting. He said very specifically, their hardliners are dead, basically. I'm pretty sure he was talking about that guy. So the people that were, the Iranians that were essentially hardlining in their nuclear position, because they certainly were, they were drawing a line in the sand, and that's why it wasn't going well. Donald Trump said they're not with us anymore. He's talking about that guy. Let's go to the next one. We have Major General Ghulam Ali Rashid. So this guy's basically a COCOM commander. So think General Kurilla of CENTCOM being killed, just like outright. Yeah, he's not with us anymore. Then we've talked about this guy before, Brigadier General Amir Ali Hazijada. So he was the IRGC Aerospace Forces commander. The last time we talked about him, he was showing Shoigu around their aerospace forces. Yeah, Russian Shoigu. So this would have been like late 2023. That's why I had 2023 on my brain. He's no longer with us. Taher Pour, the IRGC Drone Forces commander, so managed all of their UAVs. You had the IRGC Air Defense Commander, Davoud. That dude essentially would have been the guy protecting them from all of these strikes, or at least coordinating all of that. Brigadier General Ismail Khani, commander of the Quds Force. The Quds Force basically responsible for managing all the proxies around the world. Very much kind of your spear point, your tip of the spear for Iran. Now we get into something, I'm not even going to go through these names, but I'm going to tell you that it's something like 9 nuclear scientists were killed as well. So everybody from top dogs to the second top dog, to the assistant to the second top dog, to the assistant's assistant of the second top dog, to professors, to former top dogs that could have theoretically jumped back into place. They absolutely neutered the top level of the nuclear knowledge base in Iran. Now I wanted to get into the other half of this operation. So the Israeli Air Force, something like 200 aircraft hit at least in the initial wave, something like 100 different targets. However, that's not all that they hit. There was also an operation from Mossad. Now, the original thumbnail that I had up tonight, that one showed a dude in thermal kind of sitting there. Well, that's Mossad. Essentially, I don't want to say they took a page out of Ukraine's playbook, but they snuck into Iran, built a drone base, and started striking ballistic missiles and air defense missiles to essentially set conditions for the aircraft. Here's that footage. Is there any information about the falling? I'm assuming that means pilot. No, I was going to talk about that in a little bit, and I do have a video to watch, but there's going to be a heavy caveat around that video because we have video and statements from the information space, and then a direct denial of that from the IDF. But we'll get into it here in a little bit. Now, so like I mentioned, Mossad made their way, and these are supposedly like, I shouldn't even say made their way in. These are like Iranians that have been recruited by Mossad that set all of this up and then, you know, sabotaged all this stuff. From Israel's perspective, you cut off the leadership's head, which is probably what delayed response. The initial wave of response was something like, I don't know, 100 drones, 100 Shahed drones, and they puttered their way into like Iraq and got shot down. Then you have dozens and dozens of, actually close to 100 ballistic missiles, somewhere between 100 and 150, but we'll get there. But those have all been launched by these new guys that had to essentially fill these roles. So you set conditions for being able to manage the response from Iran. Then you neuter the entirety of the top level knowledge of their nuclear capability. Some of those other locations that were hit, though, have a whole lot to do with keeping Iran from being able to strike back with its full capability. This specifically right here is going to be a missile base, a missile storage of some kind. You're going to see some of that solid rocket fuel cooking off. I want to say this is in Tabriz. I do have a location for this. This is in western Iran. And let me show you the location of that really quick. There are not, this was most certainly not a single point in Iran that was hit. So that's your POV. Like I mentioned, though, there were also underground facilities. Kermanshah was hit. Kermanshah, a very large underground facility here. Let me get you back over to the map. Known to house a ton of ballistic missiles. Was hit. And the POV location for this is going to be here. So this is where this video was filmed from. Right there. Let me get the footage up for you. Coming up now. My PC's doing all kinds of weird stuff today. Sorry, guys. Thanks for your patience. Hopefully you've hit the like button for me. There we go. It's big bada boom. So if you were to tell me, well, there's no way they hit that thing, you know, inside of it, dog. That's not a surface problem. That's not like, you know, you collapse the entrance. That's all of that compression of all of those munitions inside of that underground area that have created this just massive plume of debris, smoke, fire probably down at its lower end. It looks like a volcano went off there. Ethan, why don't you wait for a minute, man? We're not done covering the first part of the operation. All right, let's move to the next video that I have here. Oh, I wanted to show you guys. I don't know why I didn't cover this earlier. I kind of have it in a timeline order. This was the statement from the IDF. Now, at the time of putting this together, we had yet to have a statement from Iran. But this is the statement from the IDF shortly after everything had kicked off. It's always kind of important to get from their mouth their perspective of why they are doing what they're doing. I don't like being kind of the middleman of it all. Hold on, let me close that. Here you go.
The regime has called for the destruction of the state of Israel, planning and advancing concrete military plans to do so. Over the past few months, intelligence has shown that Iran is closer than ever to obtaining a nuclear weapon. This morning, the IDF began preemptive and precise strikes targeting the Iranian nuclear program in order to prevent the Iranian regime's ability to build a nuclear bomb in the immediate time frame. We have no choice. We are operating against an imminent and existential threat. We cannot allow the Iranian regime to obtain a nuclear weapon that would be a danger to Israel and the entire world. This operation is for our right to exist here, for our future and for our children's future. The State of Israel has the right and the obligation to operate in order to protect its people and will continue to do so. The IDF conducted significant preparations for this operation. We are well prepared both in defense and offense to defend ourselves. The IDF will continue to defend the State of Israel.
Okay, that was, as I mentioned, the IDF spokesman's official kind of statement. That was the first statement, if I recall, that came from the IDF after things kind of kicked off late last night, which was technically early in the morning for Israel. The attacks, however, were kind of continuing and are continuing, leading all the way up to the review tonight. I was still plugging away. So if you were to go to Twitter and you were to check the video list that's there, I probably have, I don't know, 5, 6, 7 more videos now than I did then. But here are some more of those strikes, primarily targeting, at this point, not only additional nuclear facilities. So Arak was targeted, which is water cooling capabilities, things like that, but also ballistic missile sites. I think that's a Fatah, F-A-T-A-H, Fatah, whatever, however you pronounce it, with the thing in the back of your throat. Now let's start getting into Iran's response, because it took quite a while to get a response from Iran. Not as long as historically though. So historically, Iran has taken a couple days. They kind of, I don't know, circled the wagons or something, and then launched like 300 some odd ballistic missiles. But initially, their response was about 100 Shahed drones, which makes me think that this level of the response came from some tactical level organization that was just like, full send, let's just hit them with what we've got, we'll worry about orders later. As far as I'm tracking, and this is not the case for the later retaliation, all of these were intercepted, and we're going to see most of that now. Or I shouldn't say most of that. We're going to see a couple examples of that over the next few videos. There's an intercept there. And then another one here. Now, again, these things putter along at something like 100 miles an hour. And they have to make their way all the way across Syria, right? So Syria is sitting right there in the middle. And I heard, I happened to see a question earlier in the chat. I wonder where these planes came from. They came across Syria. They were literally refueling over Deir ez-Zor, Syria. Like the Israeli planes were. That's like, imagine. I think I mentioned this earlier as well. Imagine for a second a bunch of planes bombed Washington, D.C., and then chose to refuel over West Virginia. Like, that's like 300 miles away. And it takes 400 miles away. It takes 20 minutes for an F-14 Tomcat. Don't ask me why. Iran has Tomcats. I don't know if any of them work anymore because they were launching MiG-29s at one point, but it takes something like 20 minutes for a fully loaded F-14 Tomcat to fly that distance. So for Israel to be refueling, you are very vulnerable. Both your tanker and your aircraft are very vulnerable when refueling. Over Deir ez-Zor, Syria is kind of a slap in the face. That's embarrassing, frankly. All right, let's move to some more drone intercepts that we have. Again, this is a part of that initial wave of intercepts. The initial response from Iran would have been around like noonish today. Now, the other aircraft that Iran has are F-4s. And from what I understand, from what the report at least, is that the last of those was also targeted and destroyed. So, moving on. I have one more drone intercept I wanted to show you guys, which I thought was a really interesting one. This is supposedly from an Israeli chopper. It's a little bit more recent. It was released just before the stream started tonight, but it gives a super clear view of what is very clearly a Shahed drone. You got to remember how big these things are as well. They are very, very, very big. They're like big, big, big. It's not like a Mavic. Here you are. It's a very technical term, sorry. All right. Now we're about to get into Iran's response with ballistic missiles, which really didn't kick off until I want to say about 2 p.m. Eastern Standard today. But before we get there, I need to check in on the support and thank you guys very much for it. Taylor, thank you very much for the 270 super accurate 7 stories up side shots. Sweet shot. Yeah, they were extremely accurate. And I think the running consensus based on photos from Israel was that at least a portion of these strikes were conducted with GBU-39 small diameter bombs, which are very precise. As far as the one that I'm thinking of, which shows like a very clear hole in the wall with no true real other damage, I have no idea what would have caused that. I feel like the small diameter bomb would have blown out more of the wall, but they were very precise in hitting those locations. Metal Mania 613, thank you for the $10. I did not expect Israel and Iran to pop off on my birthday. Happy birthday. One hell of a present. Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I'd consider it a present. So here's something interesting. So about 6 months ago, what's his name? Sean Ryan sat down with President J.D. Vance, or Vice President J.D. Vance. And I don't remember what the specific question was, but it was something akin to, what do you think is the biggest geopolitical threat or global threat? And he said very specifically, I think Iran and Israel. Ultimately, there are lines that have continued to be drawn in the sand over the course of the last couple years, right? So I kind of flippantly mentioned a visit from Russia, Shoigu. He visited the IRGC aerospace forces to get a handle on kind of what they had going on. It wasn't very long after that we started to see the proliferation of Shahed drones in Ukraine. We see both Biden and Trump very, very much so backing Israel, to the point to where Trump was even a part of a deception plan to a certain perspective of knowing about the strikes and then kind of alluding to, or at least placing narratives out there that he had urged Netanyahu not to do it, when in fact he had kind of given his thumbs up for it. There have been these lines continuously drawn in the sand. North Korea, Russia, Iran. I mean, even France chose a side, right? So Macron literally just said, hey, we're not going to be a part of any strikes on Iran, but if you strike Israel, we're going to strike. We're going to help defend Israel. So whether you want to hear this or not, a lot of you are here in a lot of ways because of the amount of Ukraine coverage that I've done. The potential geopolitical implications of this back and forth between Israel and Iran are even higher than that of Ukraine. just based on systemic and historical support structures to each of those countries from other countries, Israel, United States, etc. Let's move on, though. Oh, one more. RLW, thank you for the $10. Always appreciate your coverage. Thanks, man. It's just doing my best. Not that it's perfect. I hope I'm able to shed some light on my understanding of things, and hopefully it's of value to you. Skip Doe, thank you for the $2. No to AI pack corruption. And then Stark Parker, thank you very much for the $5. Now, this is the first footage that we had received of Iran firing ballistic missiles back at Israel.
آینده ما این شرایط تسعید را عذرخواهی میکنم. طی 2 تا 3 ماه آینده به احتمال زیاد ما شرایط تسعید را خواهیم داد.
All right. And then one more video of the launches. And then we're going to start getting into the impacts. I did say plural there. Hamster's running on the wheel right now. This is kind of POV footage of impacts. Bunch of civilians watching it happen. Oh, excuse me. This isn't. These aren't ballistic missile launches. I have this miscopy. That's actually AAA fire. So anti-aircraft artillery fire. That's supposed to be coming up in another section, but I'll own that one. My bad, guys. Let's move to impacts now. All right. Time out. So there actually isn't a whole lot of video of a whole lot of impacts. There have been, at a minimum, 7 of them. Flat out, 7 of them. The Times of Israel, and I'm going to give you my source for that. The Times of Israel specifically said that after the first wave, there have been 2 waves totaling about 150 ballistic missiles fired at Israel. After the first wave, the medics specifically reported investigating 7 impact sites for survivors and or any wounded. As of the latest time I had information on total casualties, I had somewhere north of 30 casualties, with 1 who died later in the hospital. Let's start taking a look at some of that footage. A lot of these videos, though, are going to be of the same impacts from different angles. Not all of them. Here is the first video that we published of impacts from Iranian ballistic missiles on Tel Aviv. So something, when I, just so you understand what you're seeing here. So you're seeing a surface-to-air missile launcher fire immediately after the impact of that ballistic missile. There are 2 impacts specifically in this footage. But that is a surface-to-air missile that's being launched in defense. There were quite a few intercepts. I mean, again, it's something like 150 missiles that were fired. And so far, I'm tracking a minimum of 7, probably somewhere close to, I don't know, 10-ish total impacts across Israel, if not more, right? But on video, there actually aren't that many. And hopefully I can find it. But there's one video that's going around that's actually from October. And it's showing impact after impact after impact after impact. It's old footage. It's got millions of views, once again. So be careful that what you're looking at is not old footage. I wish I'd have grabbed that one. Here's some closer footage of that very same impact that might have been counted as an additional impact, but it's not. Here you are. We're going to talk about this one as well. So I actually already see one of the comments. Let's talk about what we're looking at here. We're looking at a news station, right? So the comments that I saw all across the original post were, you know, must be real convenient to have all of those news cameras. Well, they're set up not unlike news stations that we have in DC, right? You can see the desk for the news station there. There's microphones on the desk. They have professional cameras. They're all set up in the middle of the city, which is where the ballistic missiles are falling. Now, again, we are looking at the exact same impact that we did in the last video, but because there are going to be so many different perspectives of what is essentially, and I'm not saying this is the only one, please don't get me wrong, but because there are going to be so many different perspectives of that very same impact, it's going to be counted, you know, over and over again. Like, what about this one? What about this one? So obviously a news station is going to have their cameras set up. They are professional cameras. They have professional studio lighting up there on the left. They even have that stupid little desk sitting right down there, just like I've got mine here. And let's move on to an even closer view of what I think are different impacts based on the launches that take place after them. But once again, we're going to see an impact around about the same time as interceptor launches. I would actually be willing to say that this is certainly a different impact. So now we're up to 3 already. That's a big boom. Now, you know, again, if we were to go back and take a look at those other angles here, is there some level of likelihood? I haven't had a chance to geolocate this stuff yet. So I'm sure that there are folks out there that are spending the time, and I'm super appreciative of them doing that. But I mean, these are ballistic missile impacts. These are not fragments that are falling. You know, this is center city. It's important to note, though, that the center city, generally speaking, is the IDF headquarters compound as well, which we could very well be close to here. But again, I haven't had a chance to go in and deep dive the exact specific location of what we're looking at here. If they were targeting the SAM battery that's firing just before the impact there, they missed. That's the truth. If they're just generally targeting that area because this is the area of the IDF headquarters, really any hit in that area could be considered a success. Just depends on how you look at it. Now, again, I mentioned that not all of them had been intercepted. Let me see if I can find one of, I know exactly where to find it. Give me a second. For some reason, I had it earlier and just didn't show it to you. I'm going to show you some of those intercepts. And I actually watched those live. So I don't typically watch the news. Sometimes I'll throw it on in the background while I'm doing my work. But here are some of those interceptions.
Yo.
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 No, it's not the IDF headquarters. Thanks for that, Courtney.
Yo. Wow.
There's also a photo that's floating around that shows like what is the exposure technique where the long exposure where it kind of shows the lines and stuff. I put it on my Twitter, but it just kind of just shows how much was happening all at once inside the span of just a couple minutes. I think I have a little bit more intercept footage here. Probably even the same salvo because it's around about the same time. Israeli Ministry of Defense. Bring it up. Now, where were we in? I wanted to show you some of the impact damage. So again, some of these were certainly landing, and at a bare minimum, 7 impacts is what I'm tracking. At a bare minimum, I've got no skin in more or less than that. That's just what I'm tracking based on the Times of Israel reporting what the medics were responding to for just the first wave. But here is some of the damage from those ballistic missiles as those that made it through the defenses ended up impacting in, around, and near Tel Aviv and elsewhere. Because if I understand correctly, it wasn't just Tel Aviv that was targeted. All right. And then I have a little bit more footage of damage after the fact here. Yep. Yeah, a lot of people highlighting the Iron Dome, you know, saying like, well, I thought the Iron Dome was great. The Iron Dome can intercept ballistics. It's not really what it's designed for, right? So that's for like those rockets that Hamas fires out of Gaza. You know what I mean? It's not really a ballistic missile defense system. That's where you start getting into like Arrow and David Sling and even THAAD, terminal high altitude air defense, right? Which there is a THAAD battery in Israel, and the United States is manning it. And supposedly, at least according to statements from official statements from Israelis, engaging with it. Here is a fragment of those. One of the big problems that people don't give enough credit to are fragments that end up falling down after intercept. So, you know, if you're firing 100 to 150 ballistic missiles, and even if 90 some odd % of them are intercepted, well, it doesn't disintegrate. It just bursts into little pieces.
Video.
Little being relative.
Video.
Who do you guys think will win? What does win mean to you? What does win mean? People have asked me that about the war in Ukraine over and over again. Like, who's winning? Like, what does winning mean? Define winning, right? Even so, I'll invoke Vice President Vance again. Somebody recently asked him, "Hey, are we committed to helping Ukraine win?" He said, "Define win." But when it comes to Israel and Iran, define what that means. That could mean a whole lot of different things to a whole lot of different people. All right, let's move to some of these things are getting intercepted very, very low. I mean low, like almost spitting distance low off the ground. Let me show you this one. This was in Eilat. Eilat? Here you are. Just behind the palm tree there. No casualty? Then no. That's actually profound. So if no casualty is winning, then nobody has ever won any war in history that I know of. Some of them are intercepted very, very high. Speaking of Arrow, this is reported to be Arrow 3 intercepts in space. They're exoatmospheric intercepts. See it? Fascinating. All right, and I got another one for you. And then I have one more of these. This, I don't know, space stuff, man. You gotta look hard on this one. There it is, right there. But Ronnie, that sucked. I come here for the good footage. All right, fine. Here is an exoatmospheric intercept from, I don't know which system, which platform. But it is fascinating to watch. Ooh. Some language is universal, guys. Ooh. Ooh. That's cool looking, man. Looks like a jellyfish. Look at that. Anyway, I mentioned earlier that one of the priority targets for that Mossad operation for airstrikes was anti-air capabilities. Well, not all of their anti-air capabilities have been used. I'm going to give you proof of that. So here is AAA fire inside of Tehran. So this was earlier today, probably around noonish, noon to 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. That's nose on nose hit. Yeah, in order for it to be as perfectly round like that, I mean, it had to have just hit like that and just kind of mushroomed out from it. It just really, I'm fascinated by anything in space, first of all. But some of you have mentioned HLC. So he and I know each other. I would consider ourselves friends. He's actually relatively close to me right now, and I had considered seeing if he wanted to come out here, but he's up here for the parade, and I won't be going to that. You're not going to catch me going anywhere on June 14th. Let's just put it that way. More AAA fire. So again, not all of Iran's anti-air capabilities have been neutered. They at least still have the guns. I think we tried viewing this one. I think I actually showed you this one earlier, didn't I? No, this is a new one. No, I will be staying in, and I'm cooking a brisket tomorrow. I'm gonna sit right next to the smoker. I'm gonna cut the grass, drink beer, and I don't know, probably shoot my guns. So strikes are continuing to take place right now. I would say that like minutes before I started, I was reading the next report of additional Israeli airstrikes because we're coming up on the end of the show already, to be honest with you. It was an inordinate amount of research to ensure that I had at least gotten some basis of understanding of what I was looking at here. And it's important to note that I don't think that we're really close to the end of it, right? So there are a couple reasons that I don't think we're very close to the end. First of all is based on statements. So you can hold whatever weight you want to in statements, but at that level of government, at the, defense secretary, at the president level of government, words very much matter. And that's actually one of the reasons that a lot of, senior executives don't like Trump, because sometimes he'll just go way off the record and just, way off the record. A lot of those things are typically planned for weeks. Well, the United States, along with France, have said very, very clearly that if Iran responds to Israel's strikes, then the United States would get involved. What level that is, I'm not entirely certain. Not at all. Israel has come out and said, since you are lobbing ballistic missiles into our population centers, now you're going to feel it. I don't know what that means either. And of course, I'm paraphrasing. They didn't say, now you're going to feel it. I'm not a news anchor. Like, I'm not here to give you their quote. I'm here to conceptualize my understanding of things for you. I don't think this is kind of that one and done series of actions. I see this as kind of a continuous operation over time, tit for tat, eye for an eye for a while. At some point, it might not be an eye for an eye anymore, dependent upon how much this escalates from a United States perspective. Which allies Iran is able to get involved. I think that this is probably one of those situations that the geopolitical ramifications of it, because of the support structures behind each of these different countries, are very, very high, right? I always have one more video for you, and I want to check in on the support here before we get to that video. It is, the last video is surrounding the recent strikes, though, so we're going to get to that in just a second. But JR760, thank you for the $10. Do you think ongoing strikes against Iran could pressure them into returning to the negotiating table with the U.S.? Yes, absolutely. So one of the things that a lot of people get wrong about PSYOP, about information operations, is that it's all just like, it's all leaflets and stuff. These are leaflets that I dropped in Afghanistan. They're just sitting right there. It's not. The psychological impact of a kinetic strike is greater than any of those things that I can do that are cognitive only. Blowing something up most certainly can drive decision making. Now, it also runs the risk of isolation, though. So that's going to be everybody's concern, is that, hey, you're just going to isolate them. They're going to reach back to allies and partners, bring them to the table, and we're all going to be in World War III again. Born too early to deploy to the Middle East, born just in time to deploy to the Middle East. So, yeah, I think it can bring them back to the table and help them understand, hey, at least the Western world has determined that we don't want you to have nukes because you're kind of a wild man. You're a wild card, and we can't account for you not using those against people. We can't kind of consider you to be part of the mutually assured destruction agreement, if you will. You can believe in that, or you can not believe in that. I don't care. I really don't give a shit how you feel about it. It's not my place to. But I think it does have the opportunity to bring them back to the table, because that's what it's there for. Ultimately, there's the obvious quote that's out there: war is politics, and what's the exact quote? War is, I call it the ultimate form of politics, right? When typical democratic solutions break down, when typical political solutions break down, ultimately we turn to war, right? But that's why that's there. It's why it will always be there. It's, since somebody realized that you could beat somebody over the head with a rock to get them to do what you wanted them to do. That's by function why we do war. For different reasons, obviously. Tommy, thank you for the $5. Happy birthday, Ron. Remember, you can hide your salami, but Masada find it. Thank you for the $5, dude. Brando Commando, thank you for the $50. Thank you, Ronnie. Keep keeping us informed, brother. Yeah, again, I'm not your news anchor, guys. If you want direct quotes and you want to know, if you want unbiased stuff, don't come here. I am biased. Anybody that you're watching that is giving you an opinion, it is going to be an opinion based on predispositions and bias. What you can always hope for, though, is objectivity. right? So our biases are built over a lifetime of experiences. They're gonna kind of drive how we think about things, who we consider to be friendly, who we consider not to be. There is nobody that is not biased. You can hope for objectivity, though, and I think that people get those two things wrong. I think that they prioritize unbiased because typically when you're telling somebody that they're biased, it's because they're not biased towards your bias. Hope for objectivity. And that's all I can hope that I give you. JR, thank you again for the $10. Josh for the $5. Skip Doe, thank you for the $2. Combat footage on USS Liberty. I don't think there's no footage of that. It's Jeremy, thank you for the $2. Appreciate you very much, man. We have a new member, KC. Welcome to the Funkers. Appreciate you. And I have one more video for you guys. We've already gone an hour and a little over an hour, but this is still from our strikes here in Israel or Tehran. Just be careful out there, all right? We're going to be jumping over to the follow-up stream where I'm going to kick back and drink a bunch of beer, and you can come make fun of me over there if you want to. But when you're out there celebrating war happening, make sure to look both ways when you cross the street. Good night. Thank you very much for being here. I'll see you guys on the follow-up stream. Stick around in the chat because it's going to give you a chance to auto redirect over there where we're going to do our best Lisan al-Gaib impression. Good night. Go be great and stay informed. Damn. Who's at fault here? Is this Mossad?